Today's session is all about overcoming overwhelm, fear, and anxiety. For those of you who have been with me for the first two sessions, we started off our journey together on getting clear for what our divine vision, what our big, juicy vision for our life is. That was our first session that we did together. To really allow ourselves to, break the limitations that we've given ourselves about what's possible for our lives and allow ourselves to dream a little bit more. And then we moved into Eat with Intention, which is my book, as Lauren mentioned. And we talked about how we can really fuel our body and take care of our body from a place of self-love. Showing up as our best self also means taking care of ourselves, whether that's sleeping, whether that's the food that we put in ourselves, how we move our body, listening to our body, honoring our own bio-individuality. And so this week, we're tackling our mental health a bit. Overwhelm, fear, and anxiety are the biggest roadblocks that come up. I see in my clients when we're trying to go after it, when we're trying to really, no matter what, right? Whatever goal we might have, one of the biggest things that gets in our way is overwhelm, fear, and anxiety. And if you're here and you're here for this, I would love to see in the chat you to let me know, out of all these three, which one do you think you struggle with the most, and how does that show up for you? And while you guys are putting that in the chat, and like I want to remind you guys, I'm here to be of service to you. So the more you participate, the more you let me know what's going on for you, the more I can make sure that you get the information and the knowledge that's going to really help you push through that. So feel free to participate and take advantage of having a resource here. So let's talk a little bit about fear, overwhelm, and anxiety. So first of all, both overwhelm and anxiety are just different versions of fear, right? They're different versions of us not being at peace, right? And most importantly, what it is, why it becomes such a saboteur for us, right? Is because it takes us out of our power, right? When we're in, let's say, just at peace, right? When we're kind of in a calm, relaxed state, moving throughout our day, we are allowed to be creators of our day, right? We're thinking, okay, how can I impact different circumstances in my day? When we're in fear, then all of a sudden it feels like everything's coming at us, right? If you struggle with overwhelm, then you definitely know what that's like, right? Overwhelm can feel like literally people are just like throwing different books at you and you're like trying to catch them all and juggle them all. And it feels like you don't even have time to think about, or you don't even have the brain space to think about what you need, right? Or what you want to do, or being a creator of your life. So what happens is that we stop being creators of our lives. We stop asking ourselves those questions like, what lights me up, right? We stop asking that. We stop thinking about those goals or those dreams we have, and we go from thriving to just surviving, just getting by. And I think almost everyone has been there when you're in a period of surviving. And ish happens, and there are going to be times where you're going to have more stuff going on at work or crazy stuff going on in family, and you might be in a period of just surviving, right? But what we want to do is have the tools so that we don't stay in that period of just surviving for very long. So we're able to move back to thriving. We're able to get back into that position of owning our power and owning that we can shift. We can shift and we can create whatever we want for our lives, right? Whatever we want, the experience that we want in our jobs, the kind of jobs that we want, the kind of work we want to be doing, the kind of feelings we want to feel when we're working, the kind of feelings we want to feel with friends, with loved ones, right? We get to consciously create all of that. And so a big part of that is dealing with, I see a lot of overwhelm in the chat. Overwhelm causes me to stress eat. That's a great thing that you pointed out, Gail. So that's taking it to another level, right? I want you guys to think about your overwhelm, your anxiety. Oh, we got Chrissy also mentioned, not being present in the moment. What are the side effects, right, of you having overwhelm and anxiety? How does that affect your life, right? So the stress eating is just one example of how what happens is when we feel overwhelmed or stress or anxiety, whatever it is for us, we tend to reactively just try to grab something to comfort us, right? So for some of you guys, it might be stress eating, right? Why do we eat? Because when we eat, what happens is it kind of like it numbs us a bit, right? And especially if you eat to the point of being like too full, that feeling of being too full actually distracts you from your anxiety or your stress or your overwhelm or whatever's going on, right? It's kind of like you pacify yourself. Other ways we do that is on our phones by spending hours on Instagram or Clubhouse or whatever. We're just escaping, right? Because we're trying to numb ourselves. It makes you procrastinate. Less experience of joy. That's a huge one, right? When we're in any of these feelings, they're the complete opposite of joy, right? So we want to get out. Too many responsibilities, caregiving, yeah, anxiety, usually caused by another person, anxiety about reemerging back into society post-pandemic. Well, here is the beautiful thing. Regardless of what your overwhelm, your anxiety, your fear is caused by, all of the tools that we're going to talk about today are going to help you take the wheel back, because at the end of the day, while there are external, and gosh knows this past couple of years, there are a lot of external things in our lives that can cause us to feel anxious or stressed or overwhelmed, right? But at the end of the day, it's kind of like that famous quote, nobody can make me feel inferior without my consent. We are in charge of how we feel, right? We are in charge of how we handle whatever might come at us, right? We can't always control the situation. I think we've all learned that this year, right? We can't control what's going on in the world around us, but we can control what's happening in our inner world and how we're responding to it. And here's the trickery of it all, right? Is that we feel sometimes more like righteous, like we're doing the like we're yeah, righteous, I think, is the best word. We feel more righteous sometimes when we are, stressed or anxious or whatever, because of some perceived external thing that's going on, right? When in reality, we're in our point of power when we're not, right? So if we can have, let's say we can watch the news and see something that we don't like, that's upsetting, right? And say, you know what, but maintain that peaceful state of mind, maintain our personal power. Then what happens, we actually can go out there and then maybe be a catalyst for change, right? If we see something and it allows us to get too much into stress or overwhelm or anxiety, what happens is it paralyzes us, right? You talked about procrastination. A lot of what this does is it paralyzes you from taking aligned actions, from taking the actions that would actually make you feel more joy, that would be more rewarding, right? And not to be cliche, from essentially being the change that you want to see in the world, right? The activists you see, they constantly have to be working through their fear and then their anxiety to be activists for whatever they're activists for, right? Because of course they're dealing with something that emotionally disturbs them tremendously. That's why they're being an activist for it, whatever the cause is, right? And yet they need to maintain that peace, that point of power, so that they can think strategically, right? So that they can talk intelligently about whatever that project is, so that they can fully show up and be a representative of the solution, right? So that applies to your life, right? It's important to just notice this. And I'm someone, I just want to put this out there. How did I learn these tools? Because I feel like overwhelm was like my constant struggle for probably 5 years, 6 years. Like overwhelm became like my pet project because I knew it was just such a saboteur of all my dreams and everything I wanted to do in my life. And then same thing with anxiety. I dance with them both now, less overwhelmed, more anxiety. And I dance with that more, and I've been able to release a lot of that, but it's a daily practice. And so I'm going to teach you some tools. And I want you to be open with me if there's something where you're like, okay, I get this tool, I'm not sure how it applies to this, right? Just ask me, okay? Because these things can apply, but sometimes you just need to hear something differently. And I want you guys to walk away knowing how to use these for your situations. And this is what I found to be the most effective. The amount of things I was able to achieve, the happiness I was able to achieve once I was able to get a lasso around overwhelm, anxiety, and fear has been incredible. And similarly for my clients. And I want that for you guys. So first, let's talk about one, I think the best place to start when we're really getting clear, because it's important to get clear on exactly what the specificities of our overwhelm, fear, and anxiety, right? Some of you already know. You're like, I know I'm overwhelmed because I have too much on my plate from all these responsibilities, or I know I'm anxious because, this person drives me nuts or whatever, right? I know I'm anxious about reemerging back into society post-pandemic. That's I think something that a lot of people are going through. And we'll talk a little bit about that towards the end. We're going to start with overwhelm. So the first place to start is really getting clear on what is your desire, right? What is the desire here? Well, at least this is how I find it helpful to organize it, right? The thing about what is my desire? So maybe like for that person, well, my desire is to be able to hang out with my friends or, kind of get back into society, when I feel safe. And then, then looking at, well, what are the fears that block me? Well, maybe you could hit all of them, right? Maybe I'm overwhelmed because I'm listening to so many different news sources and I don't know which one's the best or whatnot. Maybe I'm anxious because I'm, worried that I'm gonna catch it and what if it's too soon or whatnot. And then what are my fears? Well, my fears are, X, Y, and Z, right? Whatever it is. Now you could do that for anything. So it doesn't even have to be about that. It could be about, I really want to get this promotion at work, but I'm overwhelmed because I feel like I have so much on my plate with my job right now. I don't even know how to prepare this other stuff to apply for the promotion. I'm anxious because I'm worried that if I go for the promotion and I don't get it, I'm going to look like a failure to my manager or whatnot, right? My fears are that, they're going to give it to someone else, or my fears are that I'm not going to perform at the level that they want, or my fears is they're just not going to think I'm good enough, or whatever it is. But writing that down and actually getting clear is really important, because we want to be intimate with our fears. We want to be intimate with the thoughts, right, that come up around this, so that we can recognize them, because that's the first step. When we get really clear and we know, oh, okay, why am I not applying for that promotion? It's my fear of not being good enough, right? Why am I going out to this restaurant with my friends, even though I'm feeling really anxious because I don't yet feel safe to do it? Oh, it's my fear of, judgment by my friends or whatever, right? And so then now we're cooking with fire, right? Because now you can catch yourself. So do you guys get what I'm talking about there, which is simply identifying it is? Let me know in the chat so I know that you kind of got that. Because again, when we identify it, then we just call ourselves out on it. And that's the first step, in that example of knowing like, You know, you want to apply for the job. You know, you want that promotion. You've been courting that position and you see yourself procrastinating on it, right? You see yourself procrastinating, like Adriana said. So now Adriana knows when the procrastination starts, she can ask, what is the fear associated with this procrastination? And maybe in that moment, I don't know if Adriana's goal is to get a promotion or whatever, but for example, she's like, oh, well, it's because it's the fear of rejection. It's the fear of not being good enough. It's the fear of what it's going to look like. So then she can take counteraction. So that's like the super simple step, right? So then you can take counteractions, you know? So Deb Garrett, I hope I said that right, but for instance, right, like you get the invitation to go out to a party, you know, in a couple of months or whatever, and you feel like the pressure to do it, but you're not sure if it sits right with you, right? You can say, oh, okay, why is this anxiety coming up? Well, the anxiety is coming up because maybe my fear is to disappoint these people, right? But my truth is that I don't want to go yet, right? Or maybe my fear is about, you know, whatever it is, right? But when we call it out, then we actually start making the right decisions. You know, we start exactly recognizing the ruminations is a big part of the battle, Margaret. Thank you. Because what you're doing right now, and hopefully you guys have a little notebook and you're just jotting down like your fears and your overwhelm, the things that come up, because what this is doing, it's highlighting to your subconscious mind. These are most insidious and most detrimental to our lives when they stay subconscious. As soon as we call it out, we can work with it, right? I had this fear when I was like pitching people or emailing people, you know, that people were going to think I was like too bold. Maybe bold's not the best word, but just kind of too like forthcoming when I just like reached out to people randomly. I thought, you know, their voice was going to be saying like, who does she think she is just reaching out to me? She's crazy or whatever, right? We all make up stories. And so there have been times when I feel like the next right step would be to pitch someone or to send a DM or something like that. And that fear will come up, that anxiety will come up like, oh my God, what if they think this of me, right? And because I can recognize it now, then I can say, oh, you've heard this too, I'm going to feel the fear and do it anyway, right? Because I know that that's just my fear. That's not my truth. My truth is that I'm getting that, you know, that next right action that's coming from my soul or my heart or my intuition is saying, go pitch it, go apply for that job, go do whatever, right? And then it's the fear, the anxiety, the overwhelm that's saying no. And so when I can call it out, I can take counteraction. And the power of taking counteraction is that every time you feel the fear and you do the thing anyway, you do the thing you truly want to do anyway, right? That's when we transcend it. It gets weaker and it gets weaker and it gets weaker, and it realizes that it's not going to stop us, right? So that feeling of being too audacious, better word, you know, by pitching is now a very quiet voice in my head, because there's been enough times where it's come up and I've done it anyway, and it's led to amazing things, right? So thank goodness I didn't let that fear stop me. And you too, if you feel the fear and you do it anyway, when it's aligned with your heart, right? When you feel that call to do it, you'll start having amazing things happen as well, right? So for instance, you know, let's say there is, you know, an event you want to go to and you're feeling anxious about it because you're like, I don't know, you know, whatever. Maybe you have social anxiety. Maybe you're worried about if you're going to have people to talk to. Maybe you're worried about, you know, you have to present it and you're worried about what you're going to say, whatever it is. You have all this anxiety, but there's also that part deep inside of you that's like, this event could be big, right? I could meet somebody really good important at this event. I could, you know, make a really good impression at this event. You know, when we let that lead, right? I feel that desire to go to this event. And I know that this is just my fear. This is just my limiting beliefs. This is just my anxiety getting in the way. So that's the one thing I want you to start with that, right? And then we already identified, and then the second thing is identifying your behaviors when they sneak up, right? So, yes, Laura, we'll talk about how this applies to caregiving as well. It's I have a couple clients that are navigating this as well. We'll get to that. Okay, so let's go into overwhelm first. So, first, before I even say that, so recognizing how it manifests, right? So it was perfect. You guys called out emotional eating, procrastination, not being able to be present. Those are also really great, like, trail markers, because when we know what's happening, then all of a sudden you catch yourself at the fridge and you're like, oh, I'm just eating because I'm anxious, right? For me, it's usually scrolling, right? I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I don't even do, I go on Pinterest. I do. That's why, I'm like, oh man, you've been looking at interior design on Pinterest for 30 minutes. What are you avoiding? And then you have these little check-ins, right? You have these little cues because it's not unconscious. You've made it conscious, which gives you the power to say, oh, wow, it's 11 a.m. and I'm scrolling on Pinterest, right? That's not for work. That's not important right now. What am I avoiding? What's coming up for me, right? And then from there, we can really have a juicy conversation with ourselves and overcome it because we're witnessing it. We're aware of it. So let's talk some practical logistics. Overwhelm is huge, and there are some really practical things that have helped me tremendously with overwhelm. So the first thing is super, super, super simple, is writing a list of what you need, like your most important things to get done on a given day, and keeping it under 7 items. So you can do this 2 ways. This was so hard for me. I remember it literally took me 2 months to keep them under seven items, right? Because I would write these like long to-do lists. Long to-do lists are the enemy of your mental health. I do have a master, so you can have a master to-do list if you like to have just like a list that's like constantly there. But for your day-to-day lives, having a small, highly prioritized to-do list is key. So asking yourself, and for those of you that have to-dos to do with your job and then to-dos of what you want to do personally, what I say is do 3 to 5 and 3 to 5. So do 2 to-do lists. What are the 3 to 5 most important things for you to move the ball on at work today, right? And for Laura, for caregiving, or I think there was another person that was caregiving as well, perhaps. Then 3 to 5 things. What are the most important things that you have to do in regards to your caregiving responsibilities that day, right? Moms, what are the 3 to 5 responsibilities you have to do that have to do with the kids that day, right? And then you also need a list of 3 to 5 things that you get to do for yourself. And what this does, it does a few things for you. One, it helps you really prioritize. It helps you really think. And I like to write this list the night before. Or latest, like first thing in the morning. But I really like to write this list the night before so that I wake up and I already have that short, condensed task list. And what it makes you do, it makes you really highly prioritize what's important over what's urgent. And this is huge. I learned this being an entrepreneur, having my own business. One of the first things you learn that if you're going to be successful in business, you need to prioritize what's important over what's urgent, right? Because what's important is what's going to move the ball forward. Those are the big things. Those are the important steps. What's urgent will always be there. There'll always be urgent things that are trying to grab your attention, that are trying to pull you in 7,000 directions, right? They're saying, oh, you got to do this. Oh, you got to do this, right? But the urgent is the enemy of the important. Doesn't mean you don't get to do a couple urgent things when they come up, but you become a ninja of prioritization and knowing, okay, well, what's my important thing, right? So for instance, right now I'm in the middle of writing a book. So one of my most important things right now is writing a book. Now I get, emails, pitches, meetings, podcast interviews, all those things, offers for me to teach, do stuff like this coming into my inbox all the time, right? And so I have what's important to me. So what's important is my writing deadline. What's important is my clients that I have, right? The things that I have to do, right? So I have my two things. And then I look and I say, okay, well, what's one urgent thing that I'm going to tackle today? Okay, today I'm going to, we'll throw on that podcast interview, right? And some days, whatever, it can go up to 5, right? And then you also ask for your personal sanity, and let me know if you guys are getting this. So you ask for your personal sanity, what's important, right? So for my personal sanity on any given day, the 3 things that might be important: always meditation. Usually I either like to go for a long walk around the nature preserve by me, or I go for an evening yoga or bar class or something like that, something where I'm active and moving about. Um, and then depending on, yesterday it was organizing my closet. That was something that was going to bring me some peace that I wanted to do. And it's different, some days that will be whatever it is. I'm planning my wedding right now too. So it'll be like a wedding task, right? But what it allows you to do is it allows you to really become you're taking your power back over your schedule, right? You're not the victim of all these things that you have to do in your life, right? You are in control. You are the CEO of your life, right? And so you get to start shifting, right? And so this, this also can help you with caregiving responsibilities and with what you need to do for other people. When you get really clear what are the most important tasks, you also have the ability to set boundaries. Caregiving is one of the hardest jobs, right? Because it is so hard to create boundaries with it. But again, the reason why it's so important for anyone that's caregiving, it's the same way. It's kind of similar for being a parent too, or if you're, a stay-at-home parent, especially, is what's going to make you the best for your loved ones. Actually, this is even broader. What's going to make you the best for your loved ones? What's going to make you the best for your kids? What's going to make you the best for your clients or your boss or whoever you work with, right? Your students, if you're a teacher, what's going to make you the best for whatever you're trying to do is your cup being full. Is you being, here's what I also like to remind people of that they can forget in these situations, right? When we feel so overwhelmed, and I feel like with caregiving or also with kids, more so than sometimes even work, but sometimes people feel this way about work as well. We feel like we can't say no to anything. We feel like we have to try to figure out how to do it all. And we consistently sacrifice our well-being and our mental health for our job, whatever that job may be, right? And we can't do that because at the end of the day, and not to be morbid, right? But at the end of the day, what happens if you get sick? If you keep on running yourself down, if you consistently are overwhelmed, if you're consistently feeling like you're just surviving, you're just getting by, you're really not going to be able to be of service to anyone, because your train will run out of steam. We're not meant to be spread so thin, right? Our immune systems, our bodies, they need sleep, they need rest, they need time for ourselves. They need something that fills our cup up, whatever it is, right? So, like I said, for me, it's the meditation, it's a walk, it's a yoga class, right? For you, it could be, I mean, for some of my friends, it's just being able to watch, the latest episode of whatever their favorite thing on Netflix with like a tea or whatever it is. Sometimes it's being able to, go meet up with their friends, or even like I mentioned, clean your closet, right? Um, yeah, doing something for myself can feel selfish and is sometimes viewed as selfish by my spouse. I try to make sure she can do things for herself without any grief for me for the same reason. That is really, really important. Steve, you bring up a really, really good point. Um, so here's another helpful tip with when it comes to this, right? Is communicating what these things help you do, right? So, for instance, if there's people in your life, whether it's like your partner, which is a huge one you're going to have to communicate with, or it's, the people that you're caregiving or your kids or whatever it is. So, being able to tell them what taking whatever that time allows you to do, right? So, for instance, my fiance knows that when I'm out for a walk, he's going to get a better version of me when I come home, right? He knows I'm out for a walk probably because I was stressed or anxious or had an overwhelming day, and I'm recalibrating, and that I'm going to come back and be able to be more present with him. I'm going to be able to be more like available to him emotionally, and be more myself. I'm filling up my cup, and that benefits him. Same thing if you're taking care of someone, right? Um, I was a caregiver for a few years, and my little brother was very, very sick and in the hospital. And I remember, it was really important to me to find ways in that to fill up my cup. So whether it was for me, I would go. I remember we were in Brigham Williams Hospital, the Harvard Medical School hospital up in Boston, and I would sneak down and I would go to their little, like, they have like an all faiths churchy temple-y like space room. I don't know, it's multi practice, whatever. And I would just go in there and I would meditate. Right. And I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna go meditate and then I'll come back. And he knew that I needed to do that for me, and that he got a clearer thinking, more focused and more active caregiver from that. And same thing when there were times where I was like, you know what, I love baking and cooking, right? So there were times when, even though I had to make certain things for him, I was like, you know what, I want to go bake. I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to bake this for me, or whatnot, right? And it's silly things, but when we communicate with the people we love, my fiance, he's a neurosurgeon, and he builds Legos. That's one of his things that helps him recalibrate. And when we first started dating, um, well, when we first moved in together, not when we first started dating. We first started dating, you're like, oh, you're wonderful, right? And then we first moved in together, and I was like, really? You've been operating all day, and now you're gonna build Legos when you and not hang out with me or whatever. And when he communicated with me and he said, building Legos helps me like decompress from all the stress of surgery and all the things I go through per day. And it's a really simple, really therapeutic task. Then now I get it. I get it. Okay, he's going to go build Legos. I know what he's doing when he's doing that. Right. So I do think, Steve, it's really helpful. It's beautiful that you do that for your wife, and maybe you can just have a talk with her and let her know, like, hey, I'm doing this because this helps me recalibrate, and then I come home, either I come home or I am present with you, and I'm able to be a better version of myself. Similarly, if you're a caregiver or you have to communicate that. I even, I remember when I was consulting at a luxury hotel several years ago, and I would be on site a lot, and I would just go take like 15-minute walks, because I was like, I need to just go take a walk. I need to get fresh air. That helps me be my creative best. It helps me feel my best. And no one else was going on these like random 15-minute walks here and again, right? But But when I communicated to my boss that was just like a thing, and they also saw that then they got a better version of me, that I was fresh, that I was quick, that I had great creative ideas from these walks. Um, it was great. So it is important to have both of those lists, and they're both really important because you really file down what's important in the tasks that you have to do. So it feels less overwhelming. And here's the clicher before we move on, because I feel like we could talk about overwhelm alone forever. But here's the clicher about this: completing the tasks on your thing. This is why it's so important, 3 to 5. The less, the better. The less, the better for both of them, work and personal, because what you want to accomplish is the consistent feeling of checking all those boxes. That's what's going to build so much confidence, so much momentum for you. Even if you're just like, you know what, you're at the beginning of this journey, let's say, with you've got caregiving, you're going through an insane time at work right now, you got so much on your plate, and you're like, okay, the one thing that would be amazing for me to do personally every day is to do this, is to take a bath and listen to some music. Or maybe it's to do like a YouTube yoga class or whatever it is. Like just one thing that would just feel so nourishing for you. And you consistently do that every day for a week. Your whole dynamic is going to change, and you build so much more momentum in the right direction, because now you're building confidence with yourself. Now you're building self-trust, right? This is, I believe, a big form of self-love too, is being able to put ourselves on the calendar. And that's the last thing I'm also going to say about overwhelm as well, is literally put things on the calendar. Put yourself on the calendar, right? And being able to, when you put things on the calendar, and you put things, the key, in a really reasonable way, right? So if you have a project, let's say, that you have to get done, don't underestimate how much time it's going to take you to get done, right? Because if you think about it and you're like, okay, I have this project to do, maybe I can get it done in 2 hours, but more likely I'll definitely be able to finish it in 3 hours. Then block it out for 3 hours on your calendar and strategically plan it. A big part of combating overwhelm is also what I like to call know thyself and rig thyself accordingly. We talked about this a little bit around food as well, is knowing, okay, for me, I get overwhelmed when I have kind of like randomly scattered appointments throughout the day. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for my psyche. I like, much more order. So for instance, on Tuesdays, and Wednesdays for me are when I have all my Zooms, all my clients, all my interviews, anything at all that's requiring me to sit in front of the computer like this and do Zooms. It's always Tuesdays and Wednesdays, right? And then I have none of that on Monday, Thursday, Friday, because those days I have other responsibilities I have to do, whether it's writing or filming or other things, right? So it's looking at what works for you in the schedule and what you can do with what you have. So Laura, again, with yours, you're not going to be able to schedule everything, of course, but within reason, you could schedule, okay, this is the time, like, what time do I need to go food shopping each week? Let me just schedule it in so I know that that's the day I go food shopping each week. If there are any, whether it's, if there's any medications you have to administer, if there's, if you have feeding times or nap times, or if your kid's in preschool or whatever's going on, having all of that stuff on the calendar, so that as much as you can put that on the calendar so that you can kind of see, right? If we get into the habit, right? Let's say, okay, I know every day at 5 I do this, da, 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 da. It also helps us create more space so that we can see, well, you know what? Oh, actually, when I look at this calendar, the most likely time I'm going to be able to steal away some, like, a little me time would be in the morning around 9 or whatnot, right? It just helps us. And it's not foolproof. It's not, especially when you're dealing with kids and things like that. Even when you're dealing with bosses and people at work, right? There's always that random like, oh, can you get to this? Right? But if we're, again, it's about us taking the power, us being, being active co-creators of our day. And again, if you have those small lists, like these are just these 2-3 things that I'm going to want to check off for me today. And these are the important things I need to check off for whatever the job is, whatever my responsibilities are. Then we can feel like we won the day. And it's important to feel like we won the day. Okay, so let's talk about fear or anxiety. Let's take a little vote in the chat since we only have 15 minutes left. Is you guys feel like you tackle more like the fears, like the worries about, if you can achieve something, if you can do something, or do you feel like you dance with a little bit more of anxiety? Fears. Okay, get some fears. Anxiety, fear. Anxiety. Okay. It's a lot. Okay, so I'll try to breeze through both really fast. So fears are kind of like what I just told you before. Big part of fears is being able to recognize fears, right? And some anxieties come from fears, right? So they're kind of together. So whether it's fear or anxiety, we want to write that inventory. And I'm going to take it a step further now. So you write the inventory of what are the thoughts that you associate with that fear or that anxiety, right? And write it out because they're specific to you, right? So let's say that there's a ton of people that experience money anxiety, but each one of them is probably going to have different thoughts related to that, right? So one might have the thought of, what if I don't make a good financial decision? Maybe another person has the thought, money doesn't grow on trees, or there's never enough money, or money is always a struggle, right? We all have our own like little unique stories around things. So write down all of the thoughts that come up for you that give you fear or anxiety. And then next, what I want you to do is I want you to write down what is all of the evidence that you have gathered to support that thought. Because this is where the good stuff happens. Because you want to look at I've built a case. I've built a case to feel anxious. Tell me, we got a lot of anxiety and fears. I would love you guys to be so bold as to let me know what subjects in particular cause you anxiety, or what kind of fears come up for you around what. Would be great to hear. So you're writing out what's called the thought that's causing your fear or anxiety. All of them. I know you guys probably have a ton. Then you want to go through and write, what is the evidence I've created? Well, let's say money doesn't grow on trees. Well, my dad always had to work really hard just to make ends meet. Every job I've had, I've made just enough, but like not an overflow. I feel, my cousin Bob also struggles with money, right? Like all the different examples you have in your life to support, well, money doesn't grow on trees, or rather money doesn't flow easily, right? And then what you're going to do after you've written out all the evidence that you've supported to support your anxiety, and some of these, I'm going to warn you, some of these are going to feel really, really, really true. You're going to be like, that's true. That's a fact. That's fine. That's why you have associated yourself with that thought. That's why the reason you're experiencing the fear and anxiety is because you deeply believe that thought, right? That thought that is not serving you at all, right? And so then you want to ask yourself, what would I like to believe instead? What do I want to believe? So maybe in that example, you're like, I want to believe that money flows easily when you're doing good work. Right? Okay. So write that down. That sounds like a better belief. That sounds like would be a more helpful belief, right? In the right direction. And then under that, now I want you to gather evidence for this new belief. Well, I think, so-and-so is doing really great work through this organization or whatever, and they, are very financially supported. Oh, I remember this one time I did this project and it was, really financially support, right? And then all of a sudden you start building evidence. And if you don't have evidence when you first do this exercise, if you're doing it right now, if you don't have and this is all being recorded, so you'll be able to go back and rewatch this. I know it's a lot to throw at you right now, but try to jot it down so you can finish it after. If you don't have evidence in this moment, what happens is now you've just created, your brain is going to go out and look for evidence. It's going to be like, okay, I'm willing to believe that money flows easily from doing good work in the world. Can I see some examples of that? And you might, be reading the paper and read a great story that's an example of that, right? You might run into one of your friends and they're telling you how good they're doing in their job, and then and they're like, oh, you're like, oh, great, more evidence for that. So now what you do is you start building counter evidence. So you're subconsciously, again, thought, anxiety, overwhelm, and fear are a thought problem, right? Thoughts are at the root of it. And so when we shift on the level of thought, then we shift the effect, right? We shift the anxiety we feel, we shift the overwhelm we feel, because now we have new thoughts circulating. So is anyone following me with that? So that's the one thing I would do. That's the fear inventory. I make all of my clients do this because, once again, it brings everything to light and gives you something you can tangibly start working with. Because the more you call it for what it is and allow yourself to shift it and move through it in that moment, the less power it's going to have over you, right? And the less it's going to stop us, the less it's going to have us procrastinate and not show up the way we want to in the world. So another thing, I wanted to share a tool with anxiety. I just was sitting on my knees. There we go. So this is a really helpful tool. It's bilateral stimulation. I do this with a lot of my clients when we're moving through, what I call little T trauma memories and reprogramming certain triggers from childhood and stuff. But there's a simplified version that I'm going to teach you today that's really helpful for anxiety and overwhelm and fear, that actually just soothes your nervous system. So bilateral stimulation, if you've ever noticed that sometimes when you're really angry or you're really, like, you have something like really important to think about, you're overwhelmed, it can feel really good to go on a walk. And why does it feel really good to go on a walk? Because, well, not only is it probably nice if you're getting fresh air, but it's because our feet, when we walk, naturally is bilateral stimulation, right? So we're naturally affecting our brain chemistry. And what happens is we're able to move out of our fight or flight when we're in anxiety, when we're in fear, when we're in overwhelm. Our body, our brain thinks that we're in danger. That's the message that it gets, right? And so it has us in this really heightened state of awareness so that we can take action, so that we can, it's now they call it fight, flight, or freeze, right? Is actually the three different responses in nature when we have a high stress stimulus, right? And so what doing this bilateral stimulation does is it actually brings you back into rest and digest. It brings you back into relaxation. It signals to your body on a biological level that you're safe, that you're fine, right? And it helps clear your head so that you can then take the next right action. So if you guys want to try it with me right now, you just cross your arms like this, like I don't even know what this is, like you're a mummy or something. And you want your hands just just hitting the tops of your arms here. And what you're going to do is I want you to think of something right now that might be whatever it is that you're thinking when all of you guys just typed anxiety in the chat. Think of whatever that is that's giving you some anxiety this morning. And when you have it, get an image of it in your head or an image associated with it. Feel it in your body. And then when you're ready, when you have both the feeling and the image, close your eyes. And I want you to just start tapping like a little butterfly. You're going to go right, left, right, left, right, left. So they're not tapping at the same time. They're right, left, right, left, right, left. Just butterflying and just allowing yourself, focus on where you're feeling the anxiety. Focus on whatever thoughts are coming up. And just allow this little movement to shift your nervous system and just notice what happens. Notice, for some people, it might get a little bit more intense before it dissipates, but just notice, just allow any thoughts that are coming up around this anxiety to come up. Whatever feelings, allow yourself to just feel whatever feelings are coming up around your anxiety while you're just butterflying. And take some nice deep breaths. And stop and open your eyes. And just notice, we're going to do another little round, but just notice where you're at with that. Notice how those thoughts, the image, the feelings, how it's evolved right now. So you're just taking note. And then wherever you are, I want you to start wherever you are with it. And then let's go back in, close your eyes. And butterfly again, right, left, just gently tapping on your arms. And stop. And let me know in the chat how you're feeling right now. If you're feeling a little bit more centered, a little bit more calm, or if you're not, let me know what comes up. Some of you might need to go a little bit longer. But this is a really more relaxed, good. Yay, more comfortable, more at peace, good, good. So this is a really practical, super simple technique that I wanted to give you. I have a bunch of them, but unfortunately there's only so much time. I could talk to you guys about this forever. But this is a really good one to have in your back pocket. And this is one I encourage you, if any of you guys want to, go for another couple rounds, it's super simple. When we wrap up, just, go back, feel what's still there, continue doing this. Just do this for about a minute. Stop. You want to open your eyes, just notice where you are, come back into the room, and then go back into it again, and you can do it a little bit further. You can even, sometimes what is helpful too is just repeating in your head, while you're doing this, just I'm safe, or it's okay, You're just comforting yourself, right? It's a really sweet gesture. And what it allows you to do is essentially what it's doing is it's shifting your nervous system, right? So you may even notice that some of you might have to go to the bathroom or pee or whatever after this, because if you came into this, and hopefully you weren't feeling anxious or overwhelmed or stressed like during this lovely little lunch hour together, but if you came into this stressed or anxious, our body holds, our body stops digestion. You also notice that that can be rough on our digestive process, and so doing this also releases that. A lot of people that that struggle with different stress related conditions, this can be really, really helpful for. I have a 10-year-old stepdaughter who is incredibly naturally just anxious about a lot of things, and she does this now. She's like, I got a butterfly, Cass. And it's the cutest thing in the world, but she can take herself, from a 10 to a 2 by just butterflying. And now she has this tool that when she's at school and something happens, she just does this on her thighs. But it also works if you're at work or at a work meeting and you want to be real subtle. You can just do like a little pat pat. But this is my favorite. So feel free to use this, and I hope the overall message that you learned today was also, we don't have to be the victims of our fear or overwhelm or anxiety. We have tools. We have different ways we can call it out. We have different like practical ways we can navigate it and come up with different solutions for how to show up the best inside of it, the best we can, and take counter action. And then also we have tools like this where we can, and here's the thing, this is a great tool for you. If you like to go take a walk, go take a walk. If you like to pop in your headphones and listen to like a fun song for 5 minutes and like shake it off or whatever, great, do that. But come up with a toolbox for yourself so that you don't succumb, so that you just don't say, okay, I'm just going to allow overwhelm to win the day. I'm going to allow anxiety to win the day. I'm going to allow my fears to paralyze me, right? We don't have to do that. And the more you build this muscle, the more that you notice you need to use these tools less, because you just start shifting out of it. You start shifting out of it more and more and more. And I just want to let you know, like I said, I've dealt with tremendous bouts of overwhelm, tremendous anxiety, a lot of fears. I've dealt with a lot of stuff. Like I did, practically full-time caregiving for 3 years. I've been through a lot of stuff. Definitely there's more people who've been through worse. I'm definitely not saying that. I'm very privileged in a lot of ways, but I say that to let you know that these tools work in the fire. These tool works in the fire. Yes, Harriet. So it's just this. It's like a little butterfly. So you're crossing your arms and then you're tapping back and forth. And so for any of you guys that are curious about more about this, I can't remember, it's probably free. It's either free or like it's $20. I can't remember, but I have a workshop specifically on anxiety, overwhelm, and fear that goes through a bunch of different techniques and tools as well on my website, which is just CassandraBodzak.com. If any of you guys want to check that out. And then I'll just put in the thing. And then on Instagram, I'm Cassandra at Cassandra Bodzak. And I also have a bunch of IGTV videos where I give all different kinds of tools and tips and stuff like that, meditations. You're also always welcome to just DM me if you have a question about something, or you're rewatching it and you're like, oh, I want to clarify on this. I'm here for you. Thank you guys.